are back. That's right. We are back to the Race and Ethnic Relations on Campus podcast show. I am Dr. B. Welcome back. This is show number 54. And it's entitled Race and the Tokyo Olympics. That's right. Race and the Tokyo Olympics. We are officially back. Welcome back to our show. It's July. We're in the month of July. And as indicated by the title, the Tokyo Olympics has just started this past couple of days. We actually had the opening ceremonies on Friday. And now the Olympics is underway during this weekend. Before I begin, I want to thank all our sponsors, really as many sponsors as I can remember. Of course, Podbean for giving us the platform to presenting these podcast shows. Really appreciate Podbean. Apple Podcasts, Google Play. Let me just say, iHeartRadio. Listen FM. As well as Amazon Prime, Audible, and now, officially, let me give props to Spotify. That's right, Spotify, for showcasing our Race and Ethnic Relations on Campus podcast show. Thank you, Spotify, all my listeners on Spotify. Thank you so much. And of course, I want to thank our publisher, ABC Clio, for our 2018 book, Race and Ethnic Relations. So here we are in the month of July. Here we are during the beginning few days of the Olympics, Tokyo Olympics. And let me just say, I've just seen so many. I just always enjoy the Olympics. I think the Olympics is an opportunity, obviously, for all people across the world to come together and look at these fantastic, gifted athletes in all countries in a forum and competition that is, there for all to enjoy, all the different events, all the different events. I've seen synchronized swimming already, synchronized diving. I've seen table tennis. Was it mixed double table tennis already? I've seen horseback equestrian. I've seen air gun. All these other types of events that you normally don't see, other than the track and field, the swimming, and all the major gymnastics, all the major basketball. Now they have 3-on-3, a number of new sports. But what caught my attention, caught my attention. Now, our Olympics here, I say the U.S. Olympics is being broadcast by NBC Network, NBC. And there's already controversy. Well, no, not controversy, but interesting observation. And again, it's just observation right now. NBC with the host of the opening ceremonies, with my boy. He does a great job, and I'm blanking on his name now. A great gentleman with Guthrie, Savannah Guthrie from Today's Show, and the sports host. He's a great African American gentleman. He does the host of the Sunday Night Football, and I'll recall his name in just a minute. But they opened up the ceremony. And he does practically everything, or major sporting events. He does horse racing. He does golf. And, of course, he does the Olympics now. And he actually came from ESPN, ABC, and he's been with NBC for several years now, and does a great job of hosting the Olympics, setting everything up, very detailed, very knowledgeable, very easy, to present the information. And that opening night ceremony with Savannah Guthrie on NBC, it was great. And here's the other thing about the Tokyo Olympics. Of course, there's COVID and there's no major audience at these events. So, again, the athletes have to compete with no major audience in the venues. And there's so many venues. Let me just say what I've seen on the opening. I'm going to get to the opening ceremonies in just a second. But the opening ceremonies was just beautiful. Beautiful. That, when it's presented and how Tokyo and Japan presents the Olympics. It was beautiful. Their interpretation of how we should appreciate this moment in time. And in the opening ceremony, I don't know if you saw it, they recognized what has happened over the past, because these Olympics were delayed for a year because of COVID. And unfortunately, thousands of folks have died because of COVID. They made a point of recognizing those who have passed during this past year and all the changes that had to occur to get this Olympics performing here in 2021. These Olympics should have been done last year, 2020. So give much props to the opening ceremony from the Japanese and how they present the Olympics. Wow, it was just so creative, so imaginative, so beautiful, so thoughtful. And so I enjoyed it immensely and watched it entirely. Of course, it was the preference for when were the American athletes going to come into the stadium, and they were charting when the American athletes going to come. But I appreciate, and now here's the thing. Here we go too. Now, wow, it took me 7 minutes. I'm trying to set this up, y'all. I'm trying to set this up. 7 minutes. Took me 7 minutes, almost 8 minutes. Here we go. To see how each and every country comes into the venue. It makes you slow down and appreciate the various countries, populations, people of all walks of life. And they just happen to look different, each and every country, in their uniqueness of how they express themselves with their opening ceremony clothing, and also the colors and that represent their particular country, and the diversity of how each and every country's folks, people look. That should be a celebration. Again, a celebration of the extreme diversity physically from one population to another. And then culturally, how each population country divided in different subcategories, how they express themselves differently. So many times from the outside, from our American point of view, we have all of these misconceptions and stereotypes of other countries. But when they're on the world stage, this global stage of the Olympics, it's refreshing, truly refreshing to see how other countries present themselves from their perspective. And it's kind of interesting how us Americans have to reinterpret things, and how the commentators, Savannah Guthrie and the other co-host, I'm still blanking on his name. I'll get to it. How they had to reinterpret what was actually seen and actually done by the countries, reinterpret for the American audience, how countries express themselves, and so that's what was so interesting, and how I observed what was going on in the opening. The opening ceremonies is just great, and again, it's a wake up to me. It's a wake up call to us Americans, whatever your background, racial and ethnic background, us Americans, to see other countries in their full representation, and how they view themselves, and how they want the world, there you go, the world to see them. That was refreshing. I've seen it before, again and again, but every year you see another type of expression, and I do mean visual expression, of how other countries, other people express themselves visibly, with pride. Now, one of the things that they tried to do in this Olympics, have everyone come out collectively together, and the flag bearer of each country have a man and woman to hold the flag as they come out, and that was really good to see that. Collectively they were coming out holding the flag of each country. Some countries did not, but majority of countries came out with a man and a woman holding the flag. Normally it was just whoever they assigned, but now here's when the politics are coming into play. Now again, let me just say this: politics does not supposed to be a part of the Olympics. Politics is not supposed to be a part of the Olympics, but just in the broadcast, the commentators could not help but bring in politics. If you listen to them, and how when the countries come out, they talk about a little bit of their way they look, but also their history, and how they are viewed from American point of view. Perhaps some of the things that they are on a global scale may be different than other countries with regards to human rights and human rights issues. So they bring them up. So as soon as you bring that up, it becomes political. And let me just say, also there in the stands in the opening ceremony was our First Lady, Jill Biden. Joe Biden couldn't go. He's here in the U.S., so Jill Biden is representing our government, head of state, at the Olympics, masked up. Thank you, Jill Biden. Thank you, First Lady. But again, I bring that up because politics comes into everything. Don't fool yourself. Now, let me just say, also, NBC, I mentioned NBC. Tirico. I got it. Mike Tirico. He's the other commentator. Great gentleman. Mike Tirico does a great job. But he brings in the politics of things in the commentating. Very strategically, not overtly, but very strategically, Mike Tirico brings in the politics of things. And he also brings in subtle racial issues. And if you listen to his commentary during the opening ceremonies, it was very, calculated how he presents these subtle racial issues in the context of talking to an American audience that needs to be obviously aware of these racial issues. Probably the most important element that happened during the open ceremonies. Here we go. I'm 15 minutes in. The issue of race in the Tokyo Olympics came with the lighting of the torch. The lighting of the torch that starts the Olympics. And as you know, the torch is always in motion, and you got torch bearers running throughout the entire year, or even 3 or 4 years, whatever, to the next Olympics. But during the official lighting of the last person who lights the torch it's on global scale, global stage. And there have just been famous people to light the torch in previous Olympics. Well, the person who lit the torch in the Tokyo Olympics, the last person, and the person to light it was Naomi Osaka. That's right, Naomi Osaka. The outstanding tennis player, #1 tennis player in the world, happens to be, yes, from America, but born in Japan. And it was a big surprise. They kept it to didn't want anyone to know until that last torch, and she walked up the steps to light the torch. And it was so refreshing to see Naomi Osaka light the torch where she was born. Now Mike Tirico made a point in the commentating saying, yes, she's American, yet she was born in I don't know exactly where, but in Japan, probably in Tokyo, and she's come back to be recognize her heritage, her mixed race heritage, because she's a brown-skinned person. And I believe her other one parent from Japan, the other parent is from the West Indies. So she's biracial. But she lit the torch, and sometimes people forget about that. American audiences forget about that. The challenges that Naomi Osaka has to deal with on a regular basis. So it was refreshing to see where she gets acknowledged for her heritage, who she is on a global scale, and regardless of how Americans view her, she wanted to appreciate her racial and ethnic heritage. And matter of fact, she tweeted out, and I got it right in front of me. 18 minutes. I want to read this. This is from Naomi Osaka on her Twitter account. She says, in the midst of lighting the torch, she says, quote, undoubtedly, she said, the greatest athletic achievement and honor I will ever have in my life. I have no words to describe the feelings I have right now, but I do know I am currently filled with gratefulness and thankfulness. Wow. That's what she said. Undoubtedly, the greatest athletic achievement and honor I will ever have in her life. She said, I have no words to describe the feelings I have right now, but I do know I am currently filled with gratefulness and thankfulness. Wow. So that brings race and the Tokyo Olympics front and center. And Mike Tirico made a point about that in the broadcast. And that was fitting. I'm glad someone brought it up. And fortunately, Mike Tirico, an African-American gentleman, brought it up in a very tasteful way. Not in a vert way, but in a very tasteful way. And in essence, he was saying, wake up, Americans. This is who we are in 2021. Here is our greatest athlete in tennis who just happens to be of mixed race heritage. And recognizing her mixed race heritage. So important to do these things on a global stage. So I give NBC props for that, and particularly Mike Tirico for not downplaying this issue. Much props to to Tirico. The other thing that I've noticed, another thing that happened on NBC. Now, I just got to make this point. I'm 20 maybe it's just me being too picky, but NBC does a great job of trying to present itself as a network, global network of equality and diversity and all of this. But when you look at who's hosting the individual games, who sets it up, and there's Mike Tirico on the first night, and he's there for the remaining two. But in the individual events or the throughout the day and evening, NBC co-hosts are lacking in diversity. After Mike Tirico, that's almost it with regards to persons of color being the co-host. They have another African American male late at night. I don't know him. I said, where's this person come from? Then they have a British person with a British accent hosting. I said, that's interesting. But where's the diversity? You're talking about all these skilled athletes. Where's the diversity in the host or hostess of the events from the television standpoint? NBC lacks, and I'm going to say this, NBC lacks in its diversity of commentators. Now, fortunately, guess what? Fortunately, NBC just hired 2 days ago, an African American lady. Her name is Maria Taylor. Maria Taylor has just left ESPN, ABC, and started working for NBC. And they highlighted her in between some of the segments of one of the segments on the opening ceremonies, and featured her and said, "Welcome to NBC." I thought that was appropriate, and it was about daggone time. Cause now I'm speaking to the NBC executives and how NBC looks on a world scale. They looked at how many persons they have to host the Olympics, regularly commentate, set it up for the American. They looked at their slate of employees and they realized they lack diversity tremendously on a global scale. On a global lack of diversity. So that's one of the major reasons why NBC was in the bidding war and hired Maria Taylor. She left ESPN, ABC, rightly so, because ESPN did not treat her right. I'll put that out there. ESPN, ABC did not treat Maria Taylor correctly. She's a renowned commentator, former athlete, women's basketball, former athlete, does all the football, college football, came from the SEC conference, graduated from Auburn, very knowledgeable, highly intelligent. ABC, ESPN did not know what to do with her. So NBC said, we need you. You're on a global scale. You're on an international scale. We're going to do a lot of things for you. And so it was fitting to see Maria Taylor highlighted and recognized and joining the NBC network, of which they need desperately. Now, another thing, applaud. I got to applaud that. And another thing that's kind of surprising, after the opening ceremonies and you see how they set it up each and every day, it's surprising that you just don't have the diversity of folks, and I do mean of all racial and ethnic backgrounds, at least from the American standpoint, why there's not any Latinas commentating the setting up as hosts, setting up the games. Why there's no Asian Americans? Why there's no Native Americans? Because they're all competing. So the network, when you look at the network, yes, NBC, you need to promote, you need to hire more diverse sports. Now here's why I'm getting sports commentators, sports hosts. Because it looks bad on an international scale, particularly when you're trying to promote all this equity and diversity, and you don't even follow it yourself. Hello, you don't even follow it yourself. See, that's the politics of things. You preach it, you say it, you got all these commercials, everyone's supposed to all come together like a kumbaya situation, yet you don't follow your own policies, your own issues yourself. So again, and politics comes into this. So if there's anything I encourage, 26 minutes. Wow, how did that happen? Just enjoy. If there's message, enjoy the Olympics. Look how diverse each and every country is. How there's new pioneers in each and every country. Folks who have traditionally not competed in certain events. And how our American athletes are still paving the way of new accomplishments, particularly in gymnastics. Yeah, particularly in gymnastics. Particularly in tennis. Okay? Again, just a few years ago, it wasn't that way. It was very generic, coming from the American standpoint. And I say this as a former athlete myself. You want to see people who look like you on the world stage competing at the highest level. But for so long, people like me were not able to compete on an international scale level. So again, race, politics, networks come into play when every 4 years when we bring the Olympics and all the athletes together to celebrate all of us coming together. Yet unfortunately, and sometimes, I've even got criticized for bringing these issues up, and I say, wait a minute, it's very apparent that if these major companies are not following the law of the land, why shouldn't you bring it up? So yes, I'm bringing up a little pet peeve of mine with how these Olympics are broadcast by NBC now. It used to be by ABC back in the day in the 70s. Wide World of Sports. Remember that, guys? Remember that, y'all? Wide World of Sports broadcast all the Olympics during the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. And they truly went out their way to bring in, show the diversity. But now it seems kind of genericized. And I don't know what's going on, but NBC has to, broaden its base. Other than Mike Tirico, man, it gets kind of vanilla. It gets kind of, generic. And thanks for Mike Tirico. And thank you, Maria Taylor, for joining the NBC network for sports commentators. They need you. That's the bottom line. They need you. Don't fool yourself, NBC. Keep preaching your message, but follow your own message. Do as you. What's that word? What's that saying? Do as I say, not as I do. But you have to speak up. Follow your own practices, NBC. Follow your own practices. So for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be checking out the Olympics and different sporting events. And they even have, what was it? Oh gosh, a lot of new events that typically are not. They have brought back softball. I saw the softball, baseball. I see also inline, not roller skating, but the other events. So skateboarding. Oh, they brought that back. Oh, again, great events. Should be an athletic. Oh, they also have mountain climbing and a bit of strategic climbing, controlled way. So again, take in the Olympics. It's supposed to be a sign of all of us, everybody across the globe, getting together as one. Don't forget that. All of us can get along together as one. There you go. That's the end point. Sorry I went a little long, folks. This is Race and Ethnic Relations on Campus podcast show. Wow. I've tried to do my best to keep it as, straight to the point. I did waver a little bit. I apologize about that. But again, this is the show number 54, Race and the Tokyo Olympics. And again, I'm just so delighted that the Olympics are in Tokyo, because again, you see how completely different the American perspective of Tokyo and Japan and other countries is completely different. And then when you see it, it's an eye-opening experience for most Americans. Yeah, it's about time. Wake up! It's 2021. And this is show number 54. I am Dr. B. I want to thank all our sponsors. I want to thank Podbean. I want to thank Google Play. I want to thank iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audible, Amazon Prime, Listen FM, iHeartRadio. And of course, Spotify. Yes, we are on Spotify. We out, y'all. Peace out. Yeah, we out.